When it comes to modding, there's a lot of fun blasters to do it with, whether it's things like the Retaliator, the Sling Fire, or the Aeon Pro nowadays. However, when it comes to blasters that are springers with slam fire, that's where things become a bit more complicated. The reason being is because that slam fire mechanism is really detrimental to what you can do. Too much of a spring load, and it will probably snap. Too strong of a catch spring, it won't be able to release the catch. And yeah, sure enough, things like the Alpha Trooper that I have right here, I barely put in a cut down Busby Jaguar spring in it, and sure enough, it primes, but it does not catch. Same thing with, goodbye old friend, the Rampage. It's a bit finicky. I put down a cut down spring in it too, and sure enough, it does catch, but I'm barely squeezing out 100 FPS, and this is just about the limit with the 5 kilogram spring in order to keep Slamfire operational. Anything beyond that, and Slamfire is going to have to go bye-bye because the system will not take it well. Well, Slamfire friends and anyone with a gimmick, rejoice, for Dartzone has brought us the answer in the form of the Conquest Pro. The Conquest Pro is the new, affordable Superstock Springer on Walmart shelves. Well, actually on Walmart shelves July 15th. Right now online for $40. And sure enough though, it is just another game changer. Just like the Nexus Pro was coming in at $50 and my beloved Aeon Pro coming in at $25 in its original form. The Conquest Pro sits right between those two at $40, as I said before. However, unlike being just another Aeon Pro but with a pump action kit, or just being a Nexus Pro but without the buffer tube stock, it decides to become its own thing, using a buttload of reloading mechanisms to make things work, with both the included magazines, which I hope they sell more of because I like the form factor, and the little tooth right here just makes it so much more easier to pull out of like a chest rig or belt rig or something. But yeah, sure enough, it'll work with this, and it will work with Talon mags. However, with Talon mags, there is a slight issue where if you do, slam fire or something, the catch might not be able to grab onto the Talon mag as well as it does with its own brand of magazines. So you might end up having a jam or a misfeed, or, as Coop772 said in his review, it would just fall out. Don't worry though, I will be looking into the internals, and I will be examining that issue to hopefully find a fix. But yeah, sure enough, this guy is amazing. The FPS, especially, with just your pace shots, is still hitting anywhere between 140 to even as high as 160. Slamfire, however, is a bit more finicky on the FPS ranges. I've seen it drop down to about as low as 110 FPS and go as high as 130 FPS. However, I'll see how to address that once we crack this guy open and take a look inside. Overall though, it's a great blaster. The pump grip here is comfortable. The priming length is a lot more shorter than the Nexus Pro, so even like little kids or something, I wonder, can I do it with just one pinky? Almost, kind of. I kind of cheated, but yeah, it is that short of a prime weight that even little kids will be able to use this guy if, they're willing to get hit by FDLs and calibers on a daily basis. But outside of that, this thing is amazing. It is a compact form factor. One of the complaints, of course, is just the lack of a stock. This would be something fun to put on a stock, and I could see one happening by using this, sling mount hook and as well as the 2 screw ports here in order to connect a stock attachment point or a buffer tube or what have you right there. But outside of that, it kind of doesn't really need a stock because it's meant to be some sort of like a shotgun hip fire, slam fire beast. Granted though, it's going to be about as overpowered as real life shotguns because contrary to what video games tell you or what movies tell you, shotguns can very well be a long distance shooter, especially even with the buckshot, bird shots, shells and whatnot. That's basically what the Conquest Pro reflects here with its, single fired buckshots. You'll be able to slam fire it, and rather than, hitting a measly 60 feet or 40 feet like you would with the stock Alpha Trooper, stock Rampage, you will be able to hit those 100-foot distances as you'll be seeing in the range test. Overall though, this thing is amazing, and my number one plan with it, recently I got back into anime, most importantly JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It is just a wild ride of awesome, sad, and yet just overall amazing moments in the story of, you know, Araki's just own universe. So sure enough, with how powerful this guy hits and how fast you can go with Slamfire, I'm not gonna lie, this guy could use the Star Platinum paint job, really making, you know, the stand user's choice when it comes to Springer Blasters. So with that being said, enough talking over here. Let's bring it onto the workbench, show you the range, and also show you the insides of how this thing works. Here we are outside for the range test. I put a metal pole all the way out there where the 100-foot mark is at, because I don't want to roll out my roll of tape, and I've already gotten used to the distances from the sidewalk here to the 100-foot mark. So half of the shot singled, the rest slam fire. Slam fire. We've only got one outlier in this whirlybird right here at around like 30 feet. The rest over here though, we're starting out at 80 feet, going up to around 90 feet. And sure enough, the rest of the shots, this one right at the 100-foot mark, everyone else is just spread out within this range as well. So overall though, it's a bit more sporadic because of the weird breech loading system, but you're still going to be hitting those 100-foot marks with pace shots and even slam fire. Alright, we're finally inside of the blaster, and as with all Dark Zone Pro blasters, the screws are the exact same size, so you can literally take them out, drop them, and it doesn't matter where you're going to put them back, they will all fit in snugly into the screw holes. This also makes painting so much easier because you don't need to micromanage what screws go where. Now then, onto the inside. This right here is the complicated mechanism which, you know, when you slide the magazine in from the side, from its, you know, butt, every time when you prime the blaster, this guy will in fact move and be activated to slide down and then swoop up a dart into the breech right here. And sure enough, you know, obviously once you pull forward, that's when the plunger rod is ready to be fired. Or of course, you know, hold down the trigger and the moment you pull forward, it just slam fires. This gray piece right here doubles both as the catch release and also just as a stabilizer for the magazine. And this right here in itself is the catch that holds down the plunger rod. Or is it? It's just like the Dark Zone Pro Mark II. There's a clear catch on the inside right here, and you can see the spring right there. This thing is kind of like with the Chronos has in the rival line. It acts like a mount and also just yet again another structural support to perfectly align the spring. Let me tell you now though, this spring looks big. It honestly looks a bit bigger than the Nexus Pro spring. It might be the same diameter as an Aeon Pro spring. Let me just pause for a moment, whip on out, and I'll probably see if that's true. Okay, the good news about the catch is that it literally slides out and the spring is not pre-compressed, so you're not going to have this thing shotgun out. So sure enough, you know, that gets removed. Here's a look inside. There's the catch spring. It's pretty beefy. But as I was saying, it's actually, you know, it looks wider than the Nexus Pro spring, but it's actually more narrower than the Aeon Pro spring or in general long shot springs. As you can see, this is the Uwu spring that I got from Drac a while back. It's much more wider than this guy, but at the same time, this doesn't seem like it could fit inside the buffer tube of a Nexus Pro either. So for those of you looking for, you know, brand new springs of upgrades or downgrades, we're gonna have to do a bit of research into figuring out what this diameter is and such, because it is not like any other spring I've seen. Maybe a rival line Springer, maybe, you know, K25, K26 even, but at the moment it is a bit of a mystery for me because I'm not well versed in the world of springs. I have yet to order any K26 or K25. I am planning on doing so. So yeah, that's a mystery in itself. And as I was saying, the catch itself, it's right here. Oh no, I dropped the spring. It fell down somewhere. That's a mystery for another day. Man, overall, this thing is just a catch extension. Here's the catch itself.
And that's the peg where the spring rests in, I believe the spring rests inside. Let's just line it up here real quick. Yeah. The spring goes in between these two, so when you pull the trigger or you slam fire it, obviously this thing rises up or rises down. It looks like both ways, honestly. Let's take a look at the plunger rods and the assembly here. Oh, there we go. We could actually prime it back now. Let's see here. This is rather odd. You prime it back. Oh, there we go. As you prime it back, as I said, the arm swings down. It doesn't swing down 90 degrees, surprisingly. It actually swings... It actually just swings down at an angle. That's why it's like that. And sure enough... Here, let me just grab the mag and drop it in. And sure enough, as you prime it forward, it flings the dart up, holds it in place. And then that's when... Oh, wow. There's another... Okay, then, yeah, we're learning as we go along. This is the little cup holder that literally holds the dart into place. And so that once it aligns, the dart gets sealed into the breech right here. And sure enough, you can even see the O-ring through here. It gets locked into here, and now it's ready to fire. Coming out of this metal barrel, which I'm not surprised it's probably the same diameter and such as the Nexus Pro or Aeon Pro barrels are. In terms of brassing it, I might try it. But honestly, brass barreled systems don't do well with like rapid firing Springer breeches and such. Mainly just because of how tight the fit is. You know, if you have that one dart that's like a millimeter off and you're slam firing or rapid firing it, as I've done with my Aeon Pro, you'll either have the FPS just drop to anywhere between 40 to 100 FPS, or it will actually bend the dart and get it crammed in here, and you'll just have to go with the old stick on the battlefield to just push it out. So for now, I'm going to keep the stock barrel inside, because as is, hitting 150 FPS while still maintaining slam fire is amazing. And sure enough, this is just more of the system right here. I'm pushing this guy all the way back. This is the point where it gets caught. And sure enough, you know, you pull the trigger down here, and it will push up on the system. It will push up on the catch, push up there, and just send this guy flying forward. Or at least the plunger rod. The plunger tube obviously stays up front. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's a lot more simpler than I thought. And sure enough, the dart teeth here, let me get the magazine out now. This front one, I believe, is the one that catches the Nexus Pro, Aeon Pro mags. While the bottom one down here is more designed for Talon mags. And sure enough, looking at it, if we could zoom in here, it does seem a bit too short and stout. To the point that when slam firing this guy, you do get a bunch of wobble right here. And right here, as you can see right now, it is shaking left and right. Even with this guy holding it in place, like I'm doing right now, it shakes left and right. And sure enough, that must be the reason why Talon mags slide out after slam firing it or rapid firing it a few good times. So probably adding a piece of plastic onto here somewhere, like right in between these two spaces, super gluing it onto the catch or onto the magazine, should stop the issue of this guy sliding left and right, and therefore releasing the Talon mags preemptively. And then of course, you have this whole mechanism right here. I'm actually going to unscrew this, so hang on a moment so we could look at the barrel and the breech system. Alright, so I undid the chambering mechanism. Be aware that, where is it? The screw that was holding this guy down right here actually is smaller than the rest of these guys, so keep it separate. That screw goes here, so keep that in mind. And yeah, looking at the barrel and such, it is pretty nice. This thing is controlled by a torsion spring, which in its normal resting position flings the dart holder upwards, but obviously when you prime it, you know, the forces of nature come in and they start aligning this guy so that as the dart goes into here, as this stick is moving, and sure enough, the stick right here is really simple. It's just one big bulky piece of plastic and this thing down here, so that as it goes up, it compresses as you pull the pump grip forward. The spring in here is pretty much friction fit in, and you can see it flex a bit, so be careful when taking this apart and trying to remove the spring, because there's a bit of pre-compression going behind it. And sure enough, this guy hooks onto this peg right over here. You just, drop it in right here on top of the sled, and it should be able to, swing up and down. Yeah, and then as for the priming bar, if it's even a bar, this is a priming block. Just look at this absolute unit here. And then of course here's the plunger tube, there's the plunger rod, and... What? No way? Literally, Mark II. It's ovaled. That's how they get that much power compressed into the system. Obviously the breech end itself is round, but the plunger tube and the plunger rods are ovaled, but this time they're flipped on its side, whereas in the Mark II it is like this. That's how the Mark II was able to get that much power in such a tiny, you know, just integrated magazine style. The Conquest Pro takes that same principle but flips it on its side, and I'm pretty sure this is a lockup here, so I'm going to remove it and see what happens. But yeah, it uses that oval design, and unlike the Mark II, this plunger rod does not feel so flimsy in here. You actually feel the resistance as you try and pull it up. But because of how beefy this spring is compared to the one in the Mark II, obviously, it's able to slam this thing forward and give you that 150 FPS range. That is amazing. I love how Dart Zone realized that, hey, plunger tubes don't always need to be round. Using oval and just a bit of hydraulics magic right there, you're able to pump out a lot more air in a more compressed space, such as this back rod right here. That's how this guy manages to hit those numbers. And sure enough, as far as I'm concerned, this is the guy that... Let's just try it out here. Sorry for the awkward angle. Yeah, it's this rod right here that when you pull back, obviously, it slides the breech, you know, the little cup holder of the dart down, and sure enough grabs it down into here. That's cool. So that's how it works. It basically, you know, you push it into this guy, this rod up here, the stick up here pushes this guy down, and then that's when the breech seals. Interesting. This has been a very long look inside. We're learning as we go along, but overall that's how the Conquest Pro works. As for Slamfire, it is literally the same principle as in the Alpha Trooper or, you know, the Rampage. Whereas you pull forward on the breech and hold down the trigger, this side stays up, ready to release the catch the moment you slide this guy forward and just slam it forward. However, what's different from the Rampage and the Alpha Trooper is that these are two separate pieces by nature. The Slamfire rod is one separate piece, and then they're both connected by a screw up here, which will obviously fling forward. Unlike Nerf Slamfire pieces, where it's just a continuous rod with just a tiny little block at the end, which would just, you know, misalign or just not be able to be pushed up under heavy spring loads. So that's how Dart Zone managed to get past the Slamfire issue with high-powered springers, and, you know, get it up to this point. I mean, the Lynx and the Scamp, the Gecko, they all use that, you know, reverse plunger system. Well, not reverse plunger, but, you know, reverse airflow system to get their Slamfire to work, because every time when you release the catch, you know, the plunger rod swings and things happen. I don't have a Lynx. I haven't had a Gecko in my hands yet to figure that out myself. But sure enough, that's how it works here. But for this guy, it uses two separate pieces to make the magic happen. So obviously putting down on the trigger holds that up. And when you hold the trigger down, you know, this guy stays up. So every time when you prime it backwards, it swings forward like this. And then the moment you prime it forward, it flings up, releases the catch, and sends, you know, darts flying like no tomorrow. This has been a very extended and long video about the Conquest Pro, but now we have the basic idea of how the internals work. That might be the only lock, so I'm going to remove it and see what happens. But outside of that, this has been Spartan here. I can't wait to paint this guy up in Star Platinum's colors in the near future once the summer begins to cool down from 110 degrees to, you know, 80 or 90. But for now, though, I'm getting lightheaded. I've talked for 12 minutes straight. Let's put this guy back together, and I'm just going to keep on flinging foam.